I'm so lonely, broken angel. I'm so lonely, listen to my heart.
Hello, fellow humans. It is your artsy, crafty witch, Destiny. This is my first video. Hopefully you can enjoy it. Here on my channel, I will review anything and everything romance because I'm a cheesy romantic fool. Today, we are reviewing LA's Ruthless, Fierce King by Sadie Kincade, the first book in the series. The only 2 warnings I have for you is 1, this video is not for children. This book that I'm reviewing today is an adult romance, putting more emphasis on the adult than the romance part. Also, of course, spoilers. There will be spoilers, so if you don't want this book spoiled for you, click off the video now. Or if you're just the kind of person that likes to listen to something in the background, you're perfectly welcome here. Alright, now sit back, relax, and watch as I draw some fan art for you today. Fierce King is about Elena marrying Alejandro in order to save her politician father from unexpected doom because Alejandro is a mob boss and has something against Alana's father. He's a politician. Take your guesses. Anyway, the chapters are quite short, so I will just go ahead and talk about it like one drawn out story. Alejandro and Elena get married in a chapel, which is established that this is a marriage of convenience. It's just quote-unquote business. So then why did they just not sign paperwork? They could have sent the paperwork into the press if they were doing it for social status instead of having this big, well, I guess I wouldn't say big wedding, but having this oppressive wedding scene like she's some sort of virginal sacrifice child bride, even though she is 25. Anyway, she gives up everything for her father, but doesn't really show much affection towards her father. So why is she sacrificing her life for this guy in the first place? We get a pretty good description of Alejandro, but not Elena. I guess she's supposed to be like a self-insert kind of character, so she's not going to get a lot of description. But to be honest with you, when I first read this book, I envisioned her as a mixed race child, not the generic white girl she is. After the wedding, Elena is whisked away by a bunch of security guards to the mansion. Elena, knowing that she is just a wife by contract, decides to just pick a room. Elena is off-put by the big mansion, but is she not rich herself? Maybe not as rich as Alejandro, but probably rich nonetheless, so why is she so off-put? She already's starting to show homesickness and missing New York. But the way she describes New York, my introverted ass rather be in the countryside than in this city. But that's just personal preference. Alejandro then comes in while she's lamenting and yells at her because she's not in the master bedroom. And people are talking, or the servants are talking about how she's not in the master bedroom. Oh no. And of course they get into a fight. From the beginning, we can see that Alex is bossy, possessive, and cares about his reputation. Which is why he's yelling at this poor girl. I would say he's a ball buster for etiquette. I wish they could have just had a conversation instead of a screaming match, but whatever. After their little spat, or their first spat, I should say, Alejandro leaves to the hotel he owns. He is sent a gift in the form of a sex worker by his right-hand man, who I'm not remembering the name off the top of my head. Not that it really matters, aside from he's Alejandro's buddy. Anyway, he sends this gift on Alejandro's wedding night. Like, what the hell? The woman is described in a belittling and shallow way. This is one romance novel trope that I really would like to see less of. Just because it's not the main character doesn't mean they have to be shallow. Maybe not this character in particular, but most characters are portrayed as shallow and not as good as the main character, which is kind of annoying. It's obvious that Alejandro is used to shallow relationships, but he does refuse this gift, quote unquote. Humans can't be gifts, even if you do sex work. You are still a person. But he refuses because he has morals. Even if it's just a contract by marriage, he doesn't want to cheat on his wife, which I think is a good thing. I mean, the two of them still need to talk about boundaries and crap like that. Anyway, 2 weeks go by. In those 2 weeks, Elena decides Alejandro is a shallow person for liking small, petite people. Another rant here. There is nothing wrong with someone who's petite. There is nothing wrong with someone who's curvy. The whole reason for body positivity is accepting all shapes and sizes. And I would like, in my romance novels, for there to reflect this body positivity. But I guess not every author has to do that. It's just a frustration of mine. Elena fears Alejandro will jump him without consent. He doesn't. She obviously doesn't think highly of him. Also, Elena is a peeping Tom, and Alejandro is her sexual awakening at 25. To me, that seems a lot late in life to begin a sexual awakening, but who am I to judge? I mean, sometimes you just meet someone and they just awaken you sexually. Anyway, Alejandro decides that he wants to show off Elena to his mother because his mother was not at the wedding, and his mother heard about the wedding and wants to meet her. They play the part of a couple in love very well and convince Alejandro's mother that they are very much in love and that this was a marriage for love. Of course, the mother scolds her son for not inviting her to his wedding, her only son's wedding. But she's actually really kind-hearted and shows that she likes Elena. And she kind of unknowingly plays the part of a wingman, kind of pushing these two a little bit closer together. And I absolutely love that. Alejandro overhears Elena talking to the maid Magda about how she feels lost and useless. So he helps her by talking to her about what they can do to make her feel more comfortable, which is actually pretty refreshing. He suggests that she go to a volunteer place to help her feel a little less useless. He also decides, or she mentions that she doesn't like her current bodyguard, which is why she doesn't go out anywhere. And he helps set up some candidates for Elena for a new bodyguard. Elena interviews some potential bodyguards, landing on an amazing bodyguard at the last moment. Her questions are completely random to see how much she can vibe with them, and that I would totally do the same thing. I want to make sure I vibe with my bodyguard. Not that I have one. Anyway, she picks one and they go out to the volunteer place. But it's not actually a volunteer work, it's just rich people getting drunk and saying they're doing volunteer work. But their charity is the rich kid high school, which most of their children go to. Go figure. So Elena leaves and finds the women's shelter, which I would have loved to at least have one scene written about the women's shelter, like her discovering it. As they say, show don't tell. Alejandro decides to let her pick food for one evening. As he's going to the door, he worries about veganism, as do I. I'm a carnivore at heart. At the same time, they've been together for at least a month now. You think they would have at least had like some dinners together, just kind of to slowly but surely get to know each other. Alejandro decides to give her a card for her to buy things, so she can make herself feel yet again more comfortable. Elena buys a few things, and Alejandro decides to invite her out to dinner in order to question her. Throughout this book, Alejandro is worrying about Elena cheating on him. Who hurt you, Alejandro? But even then, why are you worrying about someone who's given you plenty of reason that she's not going to cheat? I mean, I've been cheated on before, and I don't worry about my husband cheating on me. Anyway, the dinner is also to show some publicity. While they're showing up and being all hot and heavy for each other in front of the paparazzi, Elena makes this amazing comment, which is pretty unforgettable, about being newlyweds, because the paparazzi's like, hey, why haven't you been out and about? Why haven't we seen you guys? And there she makes a newlywed joke, which is fantastic. At dinner, a gun is shoved in Elena's face to scare her. That scene goes by quickly. She's whisked off, and security takes care of it, while Alejandro cares for Elena like a knight. In the limo, she is offered some moonshine whiskey, And of course, she gets pretty drunk pretty fast. And Alejandro is forced to carry her to bed. Alejandro questions the guy that shoved a gun in his wife's face. And it's led on that there is something going on with Carmichael, Elena's father, because of course he's a politician. Don't trust them. Alejandro goes to work there. He laments that he has not gotten laid in 6 weeks. 6 weeks? Ugh. Like, that's a long time. Try 9 months. Thank you, military. While he is leaving for work, he runs into one of the quote-unquote volunteer workers, and she decides to stir things up, saying she hasn't seen Elena since the first day she showed up. You know, Alejandro, of course, assumes the worst. They get into a fight. This whole misunderstanding would have been fixed if Elena had communicated what kind of charity work she was doing, though Alejandro would not have approved of it in the first place. Being the stubborn person she is, she would have still done it anyway. Then he wouldn't have had the assumptions about Elena and Hugo doing things together. It's also then revealed that Elena's a virgin, which, whatever, who cares? Elena stands her ground and explains the situation properly. Both accuse each other of cheating. And sex happens because tension. Magnetic pussy, that is a line from the book, and I just had to mention it. Alejandro takes pride in taking Elena's virginity. It's something that should not be taken pride in. A first time is just a first time. There is no such thing as virginity. Let's get rid of purity culture. There's nothing wrong with a woman having experience, so long as she uses protection. I say this for everyone, really. Stop glorifying cis females being virgins and men possessing them and taking virginity like it's some sort of prize. He makes this really silly no panty rule and just makes me think that the author has a panty fetish with how much of a focus there is on this panty rule. We finally get to see what Elena's charity work is like, which is kind of late in the book. Hugo is awesome with children. We also get to see his character a little bit more, and he might be a little bit more appealing to me than Alejandro, in my opinion. But I prefer nice guys over possessive assholes in the first place. We get to meet Lucy, who is actually a pretty interesting character. She's a 16-year-old girl who ran off and she's pregnant. She's actually not allowed at the shelter because she's underage. Elena decides that she doesn't want to tell anybody, especially not Alejandro, even though he could help her in this situation. And to be honest with you, the rest of the book is kind of a blur. A few notable scenes are Alejandro asking Elena out on a date, which is adorable, and then Alejandro taking her to an event at his hotel where they run into his exes. She overhears them in the bathroom talking about her. And then when she comes out of the bathroom, they're practically laying on Alejandro's lap, which he should not have let his exes drape themselves all over him. There's a difference between being civil and just letting people walk all over you with sexuality, which is not cool. I don't blame Elena for that being the last straw. She tries to leave the hotel, but the bodyguards aren't letting her. So she goes upstairs. When Alejandro comes upstairs, he is rightfully pissed at Elena for walking off, but he calms himself down enough to let her explain why she left. And now he's instead pissed at his exes for causing Elena to not think herself pretty enough for him. And like Elena has to compete, which is not a good feeling to have. I've had that feeling before, maybe even have that feeling now. The next day, she's able to raise herself up after running into the exes again and be like, look, my husband loves me for me. And just kind of showing Alejandro off like a prize, which is also maybe not the best thing in the world. Lucy comes back into the picture by calling Elena up because her ex is after her. Elena, even by this point in the book, doesn't trust Alejandro, so she doesn't ask for help with Lucy from her ex-boyfriend. She takes it into her own hands to take care of Blake. As you can imagine, that doesn't go over well, and she ends up getting attacked by Blake. But luckily, Lucy manages to get away. She should have just asked for help. I understand that she didn't really want to involve Alejandro, but in this kind of situation, it's probably better to get an extra hand and maybe involving the police or something. Blake steals her purse, which has everything that she needs in it, like her phone, her wallet, and she took a cab there and left without bodyguards, which was also a bad idea. She hides in a diner and calls up Alejandro, ashamed. But Alejandro comes and gets her from the diner that she was hiding in. And then they go on a tiny little trip. Alejandro shows Elena his secret spot, where he wants to retire someday. I would say that shows a little bit of vulnerability, which is not too bad. On this trip, they say I love you for the first time. They also do a couple of like actual coupley type things. When they get back, they help Lucy with her problem. And then finally, Alejandro decides that he wants to reveal what he knows about Elena's father. He gives Elena the information and says, "Go, you're free." Elena decides to go confront her father. She confronts him, and she's finally seeing him for what he is, a sleazebag. The father attacks her, and she is saved by one of Alejandro's undercover guards. Elena decides to go back to Alejandro of her own volition because she loves him. And she wants to spend the rest of her life with him. The epilogue leaves us on a cliffhanger with Lucy showing up at the gates of the mansion asking for help. My final thoughts on Fierce King are, it was actually a pretty entertaining book. I actually don't usually go for dark romances. They're not always my cup of tea. I would say this was kind of a light version, so if you're wanting to start to get into that genre, definitely pick up this book because it doesn't do too many dark things. The two main characters are not flat, but not three-dimensional. And the side characters, are okay. There are a few gems here and there. Overall, I would say it was enjoyable to read, but not my best read. I have a pretty big library, so there probably will be more books, more reviews, and I would rate this book 3 out of 5. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to see any future videos, and leave a comment on what you would like me to review next, or discuss what we reviewed today. I hope you all have a fabulous day.